Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Style. In this video series I talk about my favorite game of all time, Cosmic Encounter, and specifically I give you all 5 alien powers that work together in some way or on some real world theme. Today I'm going to be talking about games that are really good for beginners. This is something that's obviously very important because Cosmic Encounter, the Fantasy Flight Edition, is huge at this point. There's a bunch of expansions and there's a lot of stuff to deal with. So what I wanted to do here was talk about powers that work well for newer people, and that means that these are powers that hit multiple different mechanics. They're all in the base game, just the regular Fantasy Flight Edition here, and in addition they also all are optional. This is something that'll come up relatively frequently, and it's not something that you're just sitting there doing. For example, the zombie is good for new people because it means you don't die, but at the same time it's not that interesting, it's not very interactive, so that was part of my goal with all of these. First up we have the healer. The healer is kind of cool because we have a power here that allows you to help out your fellow players. In addition, you get rewards for doing so. You get cards out of the deck for doing it. Next up, we have the sorcerer. This is it's not one of my all-time favorites, but it's a really good and interesting encounter power that allows you to switch the cards that have been played, so you can create a decent amount of strategy and have some really interesting interactions with other people. Next up is the mind, the power of knowledge. This is where you're allowed to look at the hand of any of the main players. If you are the main player, you look at your opponent. If you're an ally, you can look at either player. Next up is the trader. As a main player, you are allowed to switch the hands of yourself and your opponent. So it makes for some relatively interesting stuff, especially combined with the mind. Last but certainly not least is the parasite. Parasite, very, very fun. They don't need to be invited in order to join an alliance. In fact, even if they're expressly disinvited, they can still join regardless. So like I said, these are great powers, especially for newer players, because they're ones that come up fairly frequently. They're also really easy to understand, so it's not going to bog the game down a whole bunch with a lot of analysis paralysis, and they hit different aspects of the game, whether it's in the middle of encounters, or how cards are moving around, or just being able to prevent people from going to the warp in the case of the healer. Last but certainly not least, I also wanted to make sure that they were relatively non-take that, and not necessarily not competitive, but not in the sense of like, oh, I hate you so much for doing that. More of like, oh, this happened to me, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. And all of these are not inherently horrible things to have happen in a game. And so I think these are great options for introducing new players to the game or the Fantasy Flight Edition, and just sort of dipping their toes, so to speak, and seeing what the game is all about and some of the potential of what it can do. But with that, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.